Yep.
All right, he's ready.
Okay. We call a meeting to order, and let's get some business out of the way first. I need a motion to accept the minutes from the May 16th meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion, changes?
Mike?
No?
Wow, you've gotten lax
Jack,
days.
and are you guys good with these? I know Sue's been at the last couple meetings
I
too,
did.
but these, we'll both kind of do them.
Let's stay with the consistency, yeah.
Yeah, that
Okay.
works.
So, see there's no changes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, accepted. Do we have some bills to pay? Or do you want to do those at the end?
We could probably do those at the end. How's that?
Good enough. Okay, Brian, let's tell us all the updates here.
I'll give you an update since we met last Monday. We've been working this project pretty aggressively on two tracks. One is the floor plan, and the other is addressing the desired mechanical system. I'd like to address the floor plan first, and what I've handed out are the 11 by 17s, and we've continued to work through the police department and work through the MEC to incorporate some revisions. Some of the revisions that we have incorporated are just owner requests for functionality and operational. Some of the changes may have to do with structural systems or structural requirements of the project. But I think the plan, in my opinion, as I said last time, we're not opposed to make this a better plan. And I think what we're doing over this, reiterations of the plan is to make this a better plan. And it's a better plan for us if it's a better plan for the end user. And that's really the goal. It might look the same to you when you look at the plan because it's just the same outline of the building, but I'd like to point out where it has changed. One of the notable changes in the plan that you have today is we've reinstated the 5th detention cell. So they're back from 4 detention cells to 5 detention cells in the area of the prisoner processing. To accommodate that 5th cell, it was actually on the plan as cell number 1. It's indicated here was cell number 1 was the cell that had been dropped out of the former plan. And we've relocated the prosecutor's office adjacent to cell number 1. The sergeants that were in that area got moved across the hall, and they're adjacent to now the patrol room. We're now labeling it patrol room because the patrol room has multiple functions. It's the main room for the patrol staff to congregate. They actually can do reports in that room. They can do briefing and roll call in that room. It's their room for their use. And the sergeants being adjacent to that room, I think it has some nice adjacency. The patrol room absorbing the report writing function, now we don't have a separate report writing room. So the break room, which is just adjacent to that, the break room has expanded in size. So we have a kitchen area to the right of the break room, and we have a seating area to the left of the break room. And as you can see, we have natural light coming in from the exterior into the break room. We have windows between the break room and the patrol room, and we also have windows from the break room into the corridor. So natural light now is going to go all the way through to the corridor. And it's no longer going to be feeling like you're inside of a big building. If we can bring some of that natural light through the building. The break room goes directly out into a nice sized patio area where we've located the grill and everything. And whatever they do with that patio, it's a nice outdoor space. And we would have a privacy fence that would surround that patio. So there would be privacy while you're in that patio space. So they wouldn't be public observing anything in that patio space. The other thing that fence does is protect the communication tower. And the communication tower has been shifted to the left between column lines 4 and 5, and you'll see why upstairs. So we've organized a tower location and a patio and the patrol functions. Now, still in that area of the tower, if you could go back into the plan, we have located, just adjacent to the records division now, a general office and lieutenant's office. We had in the earlier plans, we had 2 offices for lieutenants. One was in the admin area and the other was in the patrol area. The thinking here is we'll organize both lieutenants in one office space. We'll have a general office across the hall from that with 2 workstations, and that general office could be used by the department as they see the need for specialized assignments. But now having both lieutenants in that one office, now we shift to the lower left, the administrative area, and there's no longer a lieutenant's office in that administrative area. It's just chief, deputy chief, conference, and a larger area for administrative assistant would be filing, desk space, office equipment. And because the administrative assistant area got a little larger in space, we've added a kitchenette area into the conference room. So that conference room has access off the admin area for their use. It has access off the corridors for the rest of the department use. And we also can have a kitchenette area in there for use by admin within the conference room. So a counter area, if we want to put food or anything on the counter, it could be used for that purpose. That's the primary changes to the plan. Another thing that we're talking about and still trying to figure out the right solution would be is if somebody comes to the vestibule after hours, the door to the lobby would be locked. There would be a telephone in the vestibule. If a police officer would like to come and talk to somebody in the vestibule, should we be making another transaction window from the lobby into the vestibule? Or we have to think about a lot of different situations here. If the lobby's open, that means records or administrative assistant are there, and they would go to those windows. There would be bullet protection, there would be protection for staff, but the public would get assistance at either records or administrative assistant. If the lobby door gets closed and public come to the building, we have to think about another scenario of how the police department are going to give assistance to the public without having to just allow them in, but first assess what their needs are and assess, what the desire is with the police department. So it may mean the other window from the vestibule to the lobby may become another type of transaction window, so you could talk to the officer behind the glass and also make that bullet resistant between the vestibule and the lobby. So some of those little details are still being discussed. We're not saying this is 100% yet, it's just because of some of those details that we might still work out with the department.
Is that vestibule a secure room?
Yes. Yes.
Fine, could you just do it from that window from the records division? So rather than having to come through the lobby to see who's in the vestibule, the officer would have to come through the records division?
It's a good suggestion, but records is typically off limits to the patrol because they want to secure the records. So it's another room where they want to restrict patrol having access to. Because if you're losing records, or if the records are all of a sudden lost, or where did they go, it's up to the records division to be responsible for those. So you don't want people going in there off hours. But that would have been a good suggestion. So any question either from the police department or from the committee on the changes that have been made? There are 2 areas that remain in some sort of flux. That is the sally port and where the column might have to be located in the sally port. That's still being discussed with mechanical and structural. It's going to probably depend on what happens today with mechanical review. So that's one that we still have open. And then the other one that's open is the amount of mechanical electrical space that's required by the engineer. And that's also going to be determined by decisions that we make on the mechanical system. So there may become the need for less mechanical than we're showing in this plan. And if there's the need for less mechanical, then we'll give that area back to the police department for their needs. So those 2 areas would get resolved, and we feel we're getting close to being in a plan where we want to then recommend going forward into construction documents.
So there's only one shower in the men's locker room?
There is.
There wouldn't be a need for more than one? I don't know.
Probably not with the numbers that you have there. It's surprising how often they don't get used.
Really? Good.
It came out of our tours, Bob, of those newly built stations.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they said that they end up being a closet.
Really?
There's not much point.
Wow.
They will probably use one, even if it's a department our size, it ends up being a closet because they don't.
Yeah, I mean, they're only working 8-hour shifts, not like the fire department, they're 24 hours.
Yeah, I'm just thinking sometimes you go out to a call and you get a mess and it's like dealing with something that,
Go one at a time.
yeah.
Yeah, they'll rotate through one.
Yeah. Okay, just curious.
I know you had, what, 4 daughters? I mean, you know.
In one shower?
It might have been a longer wait.
I have 1 daughter, and I know I have a hard time, controlling the water bill.
Well, I'd like to move upstairs because while some changes are made downstairs, there have been some adjustments to upstairs. Most notably, in the changes upstairs for the mech, is we talked about the communication equipment room and the rack space. We also were looking at the plan and looking where the physical training room was being proposed. And we were concerned about noise going from the physical training room to the dispatch center because they were adjacent. So what we propose in this plan is we took the communication equipment room and the dispatch center and we reversed the positioning. That allows us to have a door off the corridor for just PD communications toward the top of the plan, a wire mesh partition, and then the communication equipment room with their rack space for the lower part of the plan. That wire mesh partition could have a sliding gate or a door to go between the two, but the PD rack space could be secured, and they'd have their own access. Communication equipment room would be secured. They would have their own access, but it's one environment for HVAC.
How big is that room with the PD communications?
About 12 by 10. It's showing 3 2x2 racks. And whether it has its own UPS or we go off of just one UPS, we're just showing that both of those racks would have UPS backup. Whether UPSs are just in one location or 2 locations, the UPSs will be sized for the load of all of the equipment in both of those rooms.
And that's why you moved the towers.
And that's why the tower moved, because now you can see the cabling that would come down the tower from the antennas. We would put an ice bridge across into the building, and we could come right across the ceiling space and right into the communication equipment room and service the racks from the antenna.
Just so the committee's aware, Brian has this as a 130-foot tower. The tower that is actually 180 feet that we're looking to purchase through the regional. So just FYI, it's 180.
Good.
A little higher than 130, but
We're showing it about a 16-foot wide base, so it's probably going to be similar whether it's 180 or 130.
right, the base.
The base is about 16 foot square, 16 feet on the legs. So moving that helps with the acoustics between physical training and dispatch. It helps in structural because we've eliminated a column now within the dispatch center. The way it was before, we had a column in the dispatch center. Now we've eliminated the column. We've reoriented the positioning of the consoles, but we haven't not eliminated the number of consoles. And the IT office and communication supervisors still remains. We've just flipped the locations. And the MEC had requested that the communication supervisors have windows directly out to the dispatch center. So you can see that that's been incorporated into the plan. So I don't think the MEC hasn't seen this revision yet, but we've talked to them about it. They haven't lost any functions up there. It's still pretty much the same, and I think they were the ones that were also being a little concerned about acoustics when they saw all of a sudden we labeled it physical training, and it was right next to their consoles.
Mike, what do you think of the PD? It does seem a little small. I think the 12 by 10. What do you think, Mike? A little small or
I asked for at least 10 by 10.
10 by 10?
That should be good. It's 10 by 12. So I think the room that we have right now is actually a lot smaller. We made that work. So, so I think 10 by 10 will do. Because also think we're using that room is maybe some of the equipment storage maybe, not just for server racks. So at least a 10 by 10 will work.
And depending on what your equipment is, you could be taking some of the 24 racks, the space that's adjacent. Just depends what you definitely want security on and what you might not need security on. Like telephone system, for instance, you might not.
I was gonna say, the whole telecommunications is gonna be in that rec space, right?
Right. So, continuing on, we have an exterior elevation on the next sheet. Kind of updating you on the elevation to the top of the sheet shows the proposed. The one on the bottom of the sheet shows in the dotted lines all the things that are being removed from the plan. So it's a demolition plan to the bottom of the sheet, the resulting elevation to the top of the sheet.
It is.
I'm not sure why they showed the two overhead doors to the far right as being new. I think we could just save those doors and reuse the doors to the right. I think that's just an oversight.
I think we need to confirm if they're 12 or 14. I think you showed them as 12 on the,
They're 14.
they're definitely 14? Okay, because an old plan had
An old
12 by
plan that we
12,
got from the town shows them as 12s.
But they are definitely 14.
They are actually built as 14s.
That's good. 'Cause it works with the ambulance, right?
12 would work with the ambulance.
12 would too?
12, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Height, it works.
a little more clearance is better, right?
With this, you can get a tractor trailer in it for some reason. You can
What's
get
the next ambulance?
you can get a school, well,
It's a group session.
you can get a school bus, you can get anything in this.
Well, a wrecker with a car would be a flatbed with a car. Would be
That would go in there
or
too.
pickup truck.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not gonna be limited.
Can we talk about why we need to demo all these different areas? Is
Yeah.
it just for aesthetics, or is there a structural element that you're saying that is different?
When we started to look at it, certain things are because of the structure or the existing conditions. One is the masonry. So the masonry was coming down because it's pretty porous in its current condition. So that's what the 8-foot at the bottom is. That's all coming down. We know we don't need the overhead doors, so those are all coming off. Now I'm left with metal panels that go up and down in those areas. And if I'm between column lines 3 and 4, I'm opening that up. So I was looking at what was left as far as wall and how I would then patch in what was left. And with what was left, I felt it was just probably best to take the rest of the panel down and replace it with an insulated panel. Instead of showing just patchwork where the infill work was for the overhead doors. So that was my decision on this elevation, to keep it only at the high bay space, replace it everywhere else, was what was left. It's not necessarily because of structural reasons, though. It's more aesthetics.
In the roof too?
Well, the reason the roof has to come off is not because it leaks, but it has potential for future leaks. And that's because it's all exposed fasteners. Everywhere throughout the whole roof, there's thousands of fasteners, all relying on a little neoprene gasket to make sure it doesn't leak. And that's not a long-term solution, especially if you're going to invest all that money to put a dispatch center under it. It has no insulation, doesn't have any, so there's no R value to it. So we'd have to do something with insulation. And the potential for leaks in that type of exposed fastener roof is just, there's thousands of possibilities that that's going to leak. In a big warehouse, you wouldn't worry about it. It would leak. But in this type of building, it would have a lot of problems.
And it wouldn't be, I'm just looking at cost. I mean, I don't know where we are with cost, because it seems like we're jumping into areas that we weren't planning on before. I mean, is it worth using one of those sprays that you can spray over the whole roof and that creates a better seal across the whole thing, with the idea that we'd be putting, you know, solar panels on it?
The solar panels are not going to stop a leak if the leak happens. The solar panels, I don't think, are going to contribute to the leaking because they don't actually penetrate. There's not a lot of penetrations through the roof. They'll clamp on. If you had a standing seam roof, they'd just clamp on to the
Yep.
standing seam. But what's up there now is not a standing seam roof. It's kind of a flat panel. So there's nothing to attach the panels to it unless you do drill through it and fasten it. So now you're adding all that additional penetrations if you needed to fasten solar panels to that type of roof. So you're just increasing your potential for leaks, you know, by another 1,000 reasons.
I'm not sure where I probably have a guess, but the funding for the solar panels, I mean, as much as I want to put solar panels up there too, I'm not sure where the funding for that is coming yet.
I figured it'd be something like we did with the landfill.
Oh, if we got somebody else to pay the capital cost and
Well, when you first talked about this, you mentioned the roof day one
Yes.
as an issue, and you also mentioned it was within our pricing.
Yes.
That hasn't changed,
No.
which is the other part of your question.
But you're right. You're right to say the roof doesn't leak today. You're right. So is there a need for me to put a new roof up there? I could say, no, it doesn't leak. But if it starts to in 5 years, where it could possibly be a 5-year window you have before you might start to find some leaks, I think the amount of effort you'd have to then take, because now you have a finished interior with an operating dispatch center. I think at that point, you're going to say, why didn't we do this during this project?
What kind of dollars are we talking about?
Well, I don't have that answer, because what we have to do at this point is send this out for another cost estimate. They'll put a number on it. But I don't think it would be outside the scope of the initial project.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I would add it or delete it based on the dollars, but just curiosity as to what it would cost.
Well, you can see later on in my drawings what we're proposing to do on the roof,
Yeah.
and that's what would go out for a cost estimate. So if I flip to page A3.1, you can see on the rear of the building, we're not taking the approach of replacing all the skin. The elevation to the bottom of the sheet, at the top of the wall, there are some dotted areas. Those are translucent panels right now. Those aren't metal wall panels. Those are just translucent panels that are up there. So we would be taking the translucent panels off, replacing those with metal panel. And we are introducing some windows on the second floor. We're infilling some door openings. We're reusing some door openings on the rear. And we're putting you'll see a new roof on this elevation also. But the remainder of the wall panels here is going to remain.
is it?
The replacement, we're gonna utilize what we're taking off the front to replace on the rear. So it'll be reused and reinstalled.
You're getting rid of all those doors as well, other than a couple?
We're getting rid of 1, 2, 3, 4 doors. And we're opening up for 1 door. And that's into the mechanical space. We might, wherever they need that door, we'll locate a door opening.
So you're just gonna have that one door, so you've got two,
So the-
4, 6, 8 other doors you're taking out. Okay.
So if anybody needs any overhead doors or
12-footers?
operators or doors, metal panel, or a lot of metal roofing, if anybody needs metal roofing for anything.
So did they work?
I don't know.
Jack?
Keep them.
We should definitely keep the, I mean, would they work at the DPW?
What, the garage doors?
Yeah.
They fit.
I mean, they're a whole lot newer than what's there.
They're a taller door at DPW.
You talking about the doors or the door openers?
Both.
I think that, well, I don't know. Yeah, we'll check.
Take a look.
I think the doors are taller at the DPW, but I'm not.
Well, saving a couple of panels and hardware and the openers for future damage,
Yeah.
sure.
Bottom line, hang on to 'em.
The south elevation, proposed exterior elevation to the south exposure is to the left side of A 3.2. And to the bottom of the sheet, you see the windows that are within the masonry. The masonry has to come down and the masonry has to go up again. So when you're seeing in the upper left, new masonry and new doors, new windows, that has to be done. The metal panel on that end doesn't have to be taken down, doesn't have to be replaced. We're replacing it on the front elevation. We had talked about replacing it on this south elevation also, but there's really no need to do that. So we could get a cost to do that if you think you want 2 sides of the building with new insulated panels. But we could just do the front. And so that's why we're showing the south elevation of potentially being the same metal that's there now. It is in pretty good shape.
Are you changing the door out?
It would be cheaper. We're changing the door out because it's part of the masonry.
Because it's part of the masonry?
All the frame would come out with the masonry. It's door and frame is installed with the masonry on that coursing.
Oh,
So
no,
we
I was talking about the garage door.
Garage door on the north exposure.
We're on the south side, Bob.
Sorry.
On the north,
We're over here.
on the north exposure, we could reuse that existing door. We'll reuse that existing door.
All right. I thought you were changing it just because of the window panels on the,
No, and that should be shown as reuse of existing.
okay.
So there's really nothing being done on that north end at all. It's going to stay and remain as is.
So you're
Oh,
kind
well,
of hinting
one-
at replacing the panels. Is that for insulation purposes or
Aesthetic,
aesthetic?
just aesthetic. So I don't see the need to do it. Because on the last sheet, A4.3, it gets into how we're looking to insulate this wrapper, and make this a thermal envelope. The wall section at the left is where all the metal panel remains. And it's the dark shaded on the exterior of the on this section. The darker shaded area is the existing metal panel siding, and then it has a little bit of insulation on the back side of that metal panel. That would all stay. We would infill then with new metal stud construction and infill that cavity with blown-in cellulose insulation. It would help us establish a vapor barrier, and it would increase the R value. And then the interior surface would be sheetrocked, so we'd have a drywall surface. From the interior of the foundation wall, you see another system of metal studs before we put the drywall on. We're also insulating, putting some additional insulation at the foundation wall so we don't have a thermal bridge through the foundation wall into the wall cavity. But the last series of metal studs that only goes to above the ceiling, that's the line of metal studs that's now going to take your electrical systems, your wiring, your data cabling. We could run, the contractors could run through that wall, install all your perimeter data and power without having to worry about the insulation layer, which would be set back from that. So it's an ease of construction that we're also looking at. What's the best constructability for this? Put up the exterior wall, put in the insulation value, and then leave it. And then run your interior wall for electrical and data. That would give you a good flexibility later, too, if you want to run any new data down the wall. That wall's free and clear for you to snake from above the ceiling and then get down for any new electrical drops, new data drops, new cabling. That metal stud area is free for you to get wiring down. So I think it works for today, and it's going to work for tomorrow. Above the ceiling space then would be your mechanicals, lighting, and sprinkler systems would be all above the ceiling. Now when we get up to the roof, we're investigating whether that existing metal roofing can remain. The concept now is we'll have that metal roof remain on those purlins, and then we will add insulation to the top, which would be rigid insulation. What we're making is like a sandwich panel with rigid and board, and then from that top board we would install new standing seam metal roof, new gutters, new downspouts, and that is what you can attach your solar panels to if you wanted to go that route.
So what would your total R value be for your roof? You have an R25
R25, and that's
below
just
the existing.
yeah, that's just the insulation. I don't know what the whole assembly is. We'd have to be careful as to how high we can get that R value. And the structural engineer is evaluating that right now, because the higher I know the desire to increase the R value on the roof, but as we increase the R value on the roof, we have to also increase the structure for increased snow load. So it's how much more do we have to reinforce the steel for snow load, dead load, because we've increased the R value to a degree where the snow no longer would be melting off the roof. So it is a calculation that we have to be careful about.
Interesting.
So that one on the left is if the siding remains. The one on the right looks similar. It's in the front of the building now. It's showing the 8 feet of new masonry, and it's showing new insulated panel on top of that, similar blown-in cellulose behind it. And then we have to, because of the masonry area, which only happens in the front, and 2 sides of the building has masonry, that's all. There we would have to take that metal stud wall assembly and also utilize that cavity for insulation, just to maintain an R value that we can't leave that metal stud open on the front and the side, 2 sides. So we present this just because this is in initial concept stage. We also want to sit with the building official and see if he is agreement with this as far as the energy codes, energy requirements, vapor barriers. We have to take a building that really doesn't have a vapor barrier and establish a vapor barrier. So this is how we're looking to achieve it, make it comfortable, and meet the new energy codes. So I think we've made a lot of progress that we can then, see if there are any more questions and comments, but we'd like to send this packet out for another cost estimate to see, yes, now we have a plan that we're getting closer to. We have a building that we know how we want to treat it. We know how we want to address the exterior envelope and the thermal envelope. Give us back a cost estimate on this and compare it to what we had initially as a schematic design.
This is a different question, but what's the height that you're having for the first floor versus the second floor?
For ceiling space, for the first floor ceiling?
Floor to floor.
Floor to floor is 11'4", I believe. We're showing 8-foot ceilings on the first floor. The reason on the section to the left, the reason why that slab is shaded is that's the area of the mezzanine, and that's the existing slab elevation. We're going to match that slab elevation with new slab, and that's why it's not shaded on the right. It's about 11'4.5" to get to that existing mezzanine slab.
And then we're gonna keep the second floor all cathedral?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Now, any questions on any of that? Stay west? No. I'm going to turn to mechanical.
Sure. Make them decisions.
Another one of the main reasons we wanted to meet today was again revisit the mechanical systems. From the last meeting, RDK left here with the task of comparing life cycle cost for two systems. One is a VRF system, the other is a chilled beam system. Well, the first thing that RDK did was they sent out
Page 2?
the information that they had to Mitsubishi Electric. And Mitsubishi Electric offered to do an analysis on all four of the systems that were talked about last time, not just two of the systems. And they've issued this 19-page report that you have, which compares electric VRF, chilled beams, the VAV systems, and water source heat pump systems. And while it's a lot of information, when I got this from RDK, my main concern to RDK was, well, of course Mitsubishi Electric's going to come back with a recommendation that their system's the best. I bet if you sent it out to a heat pump company, they might say that their system was the best. So this isn't going to, as far as I was concerned, this was not going to fly to present to you for this to make a decision.
Good instincts.
So take it for what it is. I wanted to give you the information, and I don't want it to just seem like it's the fox guarding the hen house, though. And this is by a manufacturer trying to support a manufacturer. So while the data may be accurate, you have to understand that the data could also be suspect. Looking at it, obviously Mitsubishi says that they're the best thing since sliced bread, and they recommend it for a number of reasons, being life cycle costs. And I think if you go to page 17, and I look through at page 17 might give you a better analysis of the four systems in kind of a one snapshot. I did pass them through there. Yep. If you go to page 17, there's an analysis with a graph with and comparing total life cycle costs to first cost to lifetime equipment, to lifetime utility, to lifetime maintenance. And they were able to incorporate your utility cost information into this. So in the category of life cycle cost, the life cycle is the cheapest for the VRF, where the first cost is also the cheapest, but just behind the heat pump. The lifetime equipment, though, is high compared to the other ones. Lifetime utilities is the lowest, with the lifetime maintenance being far lower than the other three options. I tried to get a definition of lifetime equipment, and I didn't get a good one. And I didn't know if that means that you have to replace the equipment sooner, or there's more maintenance on the equipment over time. And I'm sorry I didn't get a good answer for that, but in summary, when all of the figures are totaled up, with first cost being low, maintenance costs being low, your total life cycle cost ends up to be low. So that's about all I want you to take from this report. Now, I asked RDK, because all they had given me was this Mitsubishi report, I asked RDK to give us their report. And in their report, it's a 2-page summary, it's a front and back summary. They've summarized a VRF system with a 2-pipe chilled beam system. Now, we talked about 2 different chilled beam solutions, one being a 2-pipe system and one being a 4-pipe system. The 4-pipe system would be more expensive, but it would allow you to heat and cool at the same time. The 2-pipe system, while it's cheaper and to do a first cost installation, you can only heat or cool, and you can't do it simultaneously. But because of the costs, and they wanted to get costs that were similar to the VRF, they analyzed only this 2-pipe system against a VRF system. And on the back of the sheet, and that's why I wanted to say this chilled beam with cost estimates, that chilled beam system that they're estimating is a 2-pipe chilled beam system. A 4-pipe would be more than that. So I didn't want you to think that that was a true apples to apples, because with the VRF system, you can cool and heat at the simultaneously. So that gives you the option on the VRF system to heat and cool simultaneously, where the chilled beam system does not do that for these costs. For the recommendation of RDK engineers, and they're the ones I hired as my consultants, but they're independent, and they just evaluate these things independently. They've come to you with the recommendation that the town go with a VRF system for this project. And I think that they've supported that with the data that they have.
They just use the cost from Mitsubishi.
Yes.
They didn't develop their own.
George will ask this in a much more complicated way than I will. But just in reading the recommendation, is it safe to say that they're recommending a system that is simpler to run?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
For one thing, you don't want the 2-pipe system if you're going to go with the other, because the way that works, once you flip the switch to say it's time to go to air conditioning, it's a major project to flip it back to heat if you get a cold day. You can't turn the heat on. Or vice versa.
Which is what we have to do at the library right now.
And it must be a pain.
It is.
Yeah, you pick a day, and that's the day, and once you flip it over from heat to cold or cold to heat.
Them to pick the day. 'Cause
Yeah, that's,
if we pick it, then we're gonna be
Right.
right back there
right.
changing.
Yesterday and today would have been a good choice.
And that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Weather in New England does not stay consistent.
yeah, it's the shoulder seasons that you're gonna feel the need. And the VRF system, realizing there's a dispatch center on the second floor, they're gonna be in cooling mode 12 months out of the year. That dispatch center will never have a demand for heat, just because the equipment load in the room.
Right.
So you want a system where you can then say, okay, the dispatch center upstairs, they're going to be cooling. In the middle of the winter, they're going to be cooling because of the equipment loads off of the consoles. They're going to want to always be cooling. But downstairs, they're going to want to heat. So with the VRF system, you can accomplish that. And it's very efficient.
It's like a no-brainer.
Also has the redundancy that you're looking for.
It's built-in redundancy.
Seems like an easy decision.
Well, we want to give you enough information so it is an easy decision. But we don't want to feel like we're forcing a system on you either. We want to,
It's the right move to make.
Yeah. Right,
He
my,
wants to know.
right. Mike does a lot of work with this kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
I've seen it too.
It is far superior. The biggest issue is, like you said, heating and cooling. So when you're cooling that upstairs, when you're heating the downstairs, that's like almost running free because it's just regurgitating that refrigerant from one system to the other, not even really dealing with outside. I mean, it's really taking it out of the upstairs and putting it downstairs, maybe in the cells where you need heat, but upstairs is going to be cool. So, and it goes back to the electricity factor that the chilled beam, we're going to pay for cooling the upstairs. And with the VFDs, you can designate one to them and put it on their electric bill, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the whole idea, I would think, is to keep the utilities separate quite a bit. And there's huge redundancy. The chilled beam goes down, it's down. That whole building is down. If 1 out of 4, or if dispatch has another one, 1 out of 5 go down, you're not even gonna know because the other 4 are gonna pick up and you're not gonna notice any of that. And in the computer rooms, we would just have redundancy and put one from the police station and one from the 911 center in, and, there would be free redundancy there. Except for the electricity during that time it was down, which is only gonna be a couple of days. So, I think it gives you a lot more variable, and it has a lot more expansion capability. You buy a chiller that's a 75-ton chiller, and add that second floor, and you need 100, they don't make, well, they do make 25, but you're buying a huge piece of equipment. With this, you're just adding more condensers on. Very easy, especially for unfinished space to be finished later.
Do you know what that lifetime is, the number of years that they're talking
Yeah,
about?
I would want a better explanation of that, because, to be honest, that chilled beam actually almost looks better with that exception of that number.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a chiller's gone in 30 years, as is a heat pump, so I don't understand why.
Yeah, sure. If you look on page 16, they're showing a $500,000 equipment replacement cost for the VRF system in year 16.
Yeah.
Which is the number that jumped off the sheet at me. Does that mean in 16 years you're replacing the entire
Sounds like it.
system in 16
Because
years?
your first cost is $417.
And then from year 16 on, it's 0 because you've replaced it all.
Yeah.
That was the way I read it the first time. But you should get longer than 16 years out of these.
Yeah, you should get closer to 25.
Yeah.
They're just being
So,
conservative.
but there will be a time where you're gonna feel, anywhere from 16 to 25 years, where you're gonna say, okay, I need to replace some of this equipment.
And it's gonna become twice as efficient in 16 years as it is now.
Right.
So to put 10,000 into something that costs 30,000, you're gonna spend 30 because you're gonna get the efficiency back 100%. So I'm really impressed to see what that number is.
Not understanding the system at all, is it something that you can phase over that 16 to 25 year, you phase certain sections? Or do you have to do it, is it all at
Well,
once?
there's 4 condensers outside, and depending on how you set them up, lead, lag, you know, you might determine that one is more prominent to be running most of the time, and just, you know, in 15 years, or in 12 years, switch it to one that isn't run. Thanks. Yeah.
We want to
So
hear you,
you
Mike.
you could switch it from, you know, upstairs a rec room that's not being used, well, put that on the 16-year-old system and switch. It's not a big deal to do that, no, Jeff?
We've done that with the heating system,
Yep,
because the boilers, the one we run all the time,
Yep.
has worn out,
Yeah.
and we flipped it over.
it's a lead lag. So the worn out one is still a backup for the new boiler that was a backup. So,
Like Costco once, you wear everything out and they're all gone, now you have to change it all with you.
right, I mean, if you, that chill is gonna be a huge expense to change as a one-shot.
But is this including labor or is this just equipment?
I would suggest that that's
Just
total,
equipment.
no, that's labor.
It's kind of
It costs a lot
misleading.
less to change the chiller out than it would to cost all this out.
But with the chiller, you're only talking the chiller. That 500, I guarantee you, is most of the system.
Yeah, it seems a little misleading.
What will happen though after, 16 years, I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. The air handlers, so you're gonna change a condenser, and you're gonna have to change some of the air handlers, because the efficiency numbers are gonna be so high. So then, that's where they're gonna have higher costs, is you're gonna have to change indoor, outdoor, but you'd still have all the indoor for backup for the rest of the building. So, as anything, it is gonna wear out.
You're not going to be changing the Freon lines that are going to the
No, you will never
distribution
change the Freon lines, not in our lifetime, because we just changed to 410A. You would not change the lines, and it takes about an hour to change a head inside for somebody's room.
You're not going to change the ductwork that's going to bring in the fresh air.
And most of these won't be ducted. A lot of these will be sealing cassettes, I'm assuming, or wall packs.
Correct.
Yeah, so there'll be no ductwork, so that's just a huge,
We will have ductwork for fresh air.
right.
We're gonna bring in fresh air
We're
to
gonna
these
bring in the
units,
ERVs into the.
but it's small in size.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think they have 4-inch inlets to the ceiling cassette. That's good for
Right.
36,000 BTUs.
Right.
I mean, very, very small duct for outside air.
And if you do look on page 16, and that's why that number jumped off the page at year 16 on the VRFs, the other systems that are comparing it to, they also have replacement costs. They're just between year 16 and 25.
Right.
So it's not like you're experiencing replacement costs on one system, but you're not experiencing it on the other systems. And you look at the other systems, and they're totaling more dollars than the VRF system. It just happens in some later years.
You average out over 32 years, so you'd have a better broad, right now it's 512 for 16, and on year 21, like the VAV, it's 566, but if you're doing it every 32 years, now you're at 1,024,416 as opposed to 700,000.
And
It's
What's
kind of
good-
a hard skewed thing to go off of
Seems to be
manufacturer.
why we're debating it
But
anymore.
remember what's going to happen with efficiencies on these systems over the next 15 years, too.
No dramatic differences.
The VAV systems, the chill beam systems, they're all going to be experiencing some higher level of efficiencies in the next 15 years. That's just the way these systems are going. So it might mean that these costs, replacement costs, are going to be higher in the future than they are installing today.
Still
But
off of Mitsubishi Electrics, where they're trying to sell their product.
It's how far, well, if they're trying to sell their product, why did they put 100% replacement in year 16?
So that's probably best case scenario too, right?
No, I'd say that's worth
My
it.
experience is not needing to touch these in 16 years.
I have one for 30 years right now in Norfolk that's still running. And it does a whole apartment at my parents' old house. And 30 years, it still runs perfect.
Little different system, though.
No, it's still, yeah. it's still a cassette, it's still a VFD, it's still, I would,
Yeah, I'm sold on the system. You don't have to sell me on anything. That was-
Table.
if you don't mind, I'd take some time and get a hold of Mitsubishi myself and find out why that number's so skewed at 16 years. And if anybody'd like to go, it's out in Southborough. I've already made arrangements that we could go there and see all the displays, all of these equipment are up and running in a big, huge warehouse, showroom. I told them we'd probably take 4 or 5 people to go look at it.
It's a good place to ask them about that number.
Yeah,
Yeah, set that up,
No.
Mike. I'd like to go.
I figured. And
Mr. Chairman, if I might
Yes.
comment?
Sure.
If we look on page 18, and the last chart at the bottom shows peak electric. And I was just wondering if I could have an explanation of the difference in electric usage. The Mitsubishi VRF uses 148 kW. So in looking at this system, the electrical demand is going to be very high. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Yes.
Almost double the other 3 systems.
It is an all-electric system.
It's all electric.
Yeah.
The other one's relying on gas, so you don't have any gas demand on the VRF system, where the other systems you'd be utilizing electric and gas. But the VRF system is 100% electric.
Page 16 shows you the electric costs and the gas costs for each system for the annual. Just want to remind people that our cheapest utility is electricity, so
but that's figured in here at 11 cents a kilowatt.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's not what we're actually paying. And it's what because there's certain credits that we get because of the solar, that's our base rate, over the next 4 years. So,
What happens in the wintertime when we lose power? So we have to have a larger generator to power all this, correct? So,
This will all be factored into the generator demand.
but doesn't that increase the generator and all the building electrical load and siding of all the wiring, and doesn't that create a lot larger?
Not the wiring, not the panels, but it would increase the load on the generator.
But having double the electric consumption wouldn't increase any of the wire sizes or anything?
No.
And we did talk briefly about areas that could be left off if there was a power.
Yeah, we could shed load on the generator too, like the elevator. We're going to shed the elevator.
Right, you just
We
have
can
lockouts
yeah.
on the different utilities.
But if we take the VRF system onto the generator, now they can have heating and cooling on emergency power.
Part of it, whatever you don't shed.
And if not, does there have to be redundancy for the gas? Or if everything has to have redundancy, so
For the
does the
g-
natural gas have to have a propane tank on site backing it up
For
for
the
boilers?
for the generator, yes.
Well, what about the boilers? Because if you're in the winter and you've got boilers, everything's supposed to have redundancy, right?
Yeah, we typically don't have redundancy propane for boilers. We only have it there for the generator.
How
So
many times a
you-
year do you lose oil or natural gas here, and how many times a year do you use
You know what?
electricity?
It is in a commercial subdivision that's being dug up quite often, so, I was up there this week and saw them breaking pipes. So, it gives you capability of heating, off the generator.
Right. So in an emergency situation, you would heat and cool off the generator.
Same with any other system, though.
Yep.
With a smaller generator.
If you had the boilers, you would still be relying on gas service.
It would
On
be
the
a large
VRF
heating load
system.
in the middle of the winter when we lose power a lot, there would be no.
Then, yeah, we'd have to evaluate what that condition would be.
That's
We
one
weren't
of my issues is that
we weren't bringing propane for the boilers.
You weren't gonna do electric reheats or anything like that?
No, it was gonna be hydronic.
I get that, but I'm sure.
So what do you need from us today?
I would love to go back to RDK with a recommendation from the committee to say, this is how we're directed to proceed on the mechanical system. I would also like, from the committee, a consensus to send this to the cost estimator for design development cost estimate. So I can come back to you with an update on both of those. Now they'll know what to budget for a mechanical system in their cost estimate. And they'll know what to budget for buildings and wall and roof systems.
George, can I ask one question?
Yes, absolutely.
So Matt, I know you're struggling with the VRF system. And as our facilities manager, I guess I just want to hear you. I mean, is there one last pitch? It sounds like we're heading down the VRF path on this.
I just think that it has a lot of drawbacks, and that I don't think that when things start failing, I think it's going to be very costly in the future. And I think it's a light commercial instead of a more industrial way of doing it. And it's a tried and true, really well designed systems with VAVs that they're everywhere, and that's how it is, and it's efficient, and it's done, and it's good, and it's not. I just think talking to a lot of people in the industry, they have a lot of drawbacks, and if we're going to go all electric, we're all in on that. And there's just, I think the long-term projected costs and maintenance are a lot greater with this, but not the most popular thing, but I think it's not as good of a system. It might not be as efficient as the system, but I'd rather have a very reliable, well-built, long-lasting over something that's super efficient and to be determined. And because we have one unit that's lasted 30 years that we're going off this whole thing, and coming from Mitsubishi saying that we're the best and the most efficient, I don't necessarily think that's a good industry, where if you look at any commercial building, they're all VAV systems and they're all very well, as long as it's designed. And I'm just wondering how, is RDK getting a price per hour to do this, or is it a drop price? Because is it more engineering? Is that why we're going on this also, or is it, I don't know. I just wanted to make sure it's the best system that's going to last the longest. And I know that we have electricity the cheapest, but I just don't know if it's the best long-term solution. Because I've been trying to get my head around this and talking to people outside Norfolk that are in the industry, and they're not sold on the idea that it's what they do for a living.
Yeah, George?
Yes.
What have other police stations put in? What systems do other stations use?
This is very attractive because it's cost effective. It's very cost, to put it in. But
We have probably the majority of our systems that have been put in the last 10 years would be VAV systems.
And what has the history of that system been in those last 10 years?
I think if you go to every police station that we've done in the last 10 years and you ask the police department, what are the issues that you have, I think 8 out of 10 of them would say the mechanical system. And probably when you went around and visited police departments, you might have heard the same. It's the mechanical systems. It's too hot here, too cold there. It's not a real consistent, because you have to zone those systems. And when you're looking to save money, your zones get bigger. Your zones don't get smaller. And what people are really desiring now is a room by room by room ability to control temperature. And with VAV systems, it's hard to do that because every room by room by room is another VAV box, VAV box, VAV box. And it could be $2,500 to $3,000 for another VAV box, because then it gets into just the box, the temperature control system to the box, the piping, the reheats to the box. So there's a lot of mechanicals that go to this. So ideally, sure, you'd want a room by room, but that gets expensive with a lot of VAV boxes. So they tend to increase the zones. Like all administration area is one zone. So admin has one thermostat. So it's going to go in the chief's office. So the deputy chief, well, that room is a separate room. It has no way to control the temperature in that room because it's the thermostat in the chief's office that's controlling the temperature in this space. If you go to the VRF system, they both have the ability to control temperatures within the room now. For some of the for the costs that you're showing here. And it's become more efficient, and I think it's become more popular. We just put the VRF system into the new Dennis Town Hall. It was new construction, it was out on the Cape,
I know where, I've been in it.
and when it was just finished, and they went to VRF system in the Dennis Town Hall. And I'll tell you, they love it. They love it. Each person, it's a corridor with just offices down the corridor. And each person has a little remote. And they sit at their desk and they can just point and they control their temperature with a remote control. So I think
I'll tell you, I've worked at North Attleboro Police Station for 2 years on their VFD system, on their, variable air volume system, and there's no fixing it. There's just no fix. Huge boiler in the basement, huge rooftops, and it's exactly what he said. Is records is tied into 3 other offices. Nobody's in records. The thermostat's there. You've got these girls are freezing. They're hot. It's just all over. Where I do see it works well is I do Emerald Square Mall. We have 35 rooftops and probably 500 VFDs. Big, huge stores with, minimum 5 up to 20 V boxes in each store. You don't even know if one goes down, but they're huge, wide open areas, not individual offices. You get into that individual office areas, the more control you can have per office, the better. Chuck might want cooling, he might want heat. You're not going to get that unless you do that, because they're going to be on the same box. So someone's got to decide.
That's not accurate either, though. You can put VAV boxes everywhere, and you're putting cassettes everywhere, which also cost, and so the line says. So you're going to run ductwork and cassettes everywhere, just like you do a VAV and ductwork. And you can have sensors anywhere you want. And if you give everybody control, you're going to have huge bills too. Because just because they have control doesn't necessarily mean it's great, because then your electric bills go way up.
But if you don't have control, you have complaints.
You're going to have complaints no matter what. But
No, I disagree.
I thought that there was no room for the ductwork on a VA.
That's right. We have another problem.
Yeah, that's the other asterisk
We
on
don't
this.
have the ductwork. We don't even have the
It's either
room
chilled
for it.
beam, or it's either chilled beam or it's VFD, right?
As far as the amount of ceiling space that we have, that's what we
It's
concluded.
minimal.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see you bringing in 24-inch duct.
As I said, we're tied to 11-foot floor to floor,
Yeah.
and we have 18-inch bar joists in there too,
Before you put the mechanical,
before the mechanicals,
it never fit
So where you gonna
mechanicals
get-
to the other systems.
which is what RDK had said last week. They're just physically the size of the ductwork and the work that we'd have to do to
Why are we debating this?
figure out how we'd flatten out these ducts to get them in there would take an effort.
And now you're gonna span across huge areas and take
Yeah.
everyone else's mechanical space. So you're gonna take all the plumbing, all the sprinkler, you're creating huge ducts.
So there is a space limitation in the ceiling, and that's a given. I mean, it's the building, so we're using the existing building, that's what it is.
So we're down to 2 systems. Whatever we may have personal preference, we're down to 2 systems that'll fit in the system, fit in the building.
I did some rough numbers, just some rough calculations based on the numbers that they have here, and I did between the Mitsubishi and the chilled beams, and over approximately 30 years, give or take, because the VRF has a 32-year cycle where it's replaced. But over 30 years, you're looking at $2,140,000 for the VRF, and you're looking at $1,730,000 for the chilled beam, just looking at those costs. So in my mind, it's still very close and very comparable. I think the VRF, with the flexibility that you have in the system to make every,
Don't forget,
every
you're
location.
talking the
a two-pipe
two-pipe, you're
system.
talking the two-pipe system.
I get it, I get
That's,
it.
I'm
Which
to-
is
I'm
out.
totally against that. That's,
You shouldn't even discuss that. It
No.
should only be a 4-pipe.
exactly.
I'm just looking at the numbers here,
Right.
that's all I'm
No, I get
doing, it's just trying to
Yeah.
compare these
Yep.
two numbers, these two columns.
Right.
So it's obviously gonna close the gap or even pass it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, so, yeah, I mean, it seems to me very close, and it seems,
And
Simple enough.
with the chilled beam, we're back to one chiller.
Yeah.
And we're eating the electricity. 911 center's not paying their electric. Now, we're cooling and heating the 911 center on our bill.
Yep.
Unless we're
Divide
gonna
square
start,
footage for usage.
what?
You just take a square footage and bill them for usage. You can't just say that we eat it all.
No, you'd have to estimate it.
Yeah, you'd have to come up with a,
Strict estimate, and then it's an arguable point at all times with Jack.
exactly.
But they will be cooling. They will be cooling 12 months out of the year. There won't be any demand up there for heat. They want to shed heat as much as they can.
And if that one unit goes down, you have huge problems.
A chilled beam system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's companies that rent chillers. Very inexpensive.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, in all honesty, guys, if you have to have redundancy, then you gotta think of that. Somebody's gotta put a hookup in that if that chiller goes down, that tractor trailer can pull up, hook up. I mean, the Daily Boys do it here for the movie sets down in Connecticut. They pull a trailer in, they send chilled water to the movie set, and when the movie's done, they pull it out and they go rent it to somebody else. So, you know, you need to, if you need redundancy, you better put a set of hookups to pull a trailer in.
So Brian, are we still talking about Modine units in the apparatus area?
Yes.
You're not ripping that concrete out?
No.
Actually, there will be some concrete to get to the drains, right, in the Sally Port and the vehicle maintenance.
Yeah,
We'll have to do some work.
There
to
are
get to
drains that
the-
exist in front in the two bays. We're going to leave those drains. We'll use those
Yeah,
drains.
there's a tight tank already put in on the
Right.
far end of the building.
So we'll continue to have those drains flow to the tank.
There'll be some sort of drainage here, though, correct?
Yeah.
Over-
So there'll be no boiler, there's no boiler,
No boilers.
Which means the mechanical space,
Yep.
they don't need as much.
so we can get another cell.
It's the first engine. It's the first engineer that's going to give me back mechanical space. I mean, one of the questions was asked, and maybe I should answer it, about RDK and their how they're getting hired to design this system. We're hired under a lump sum number, so we can design whatever you want. It's a lump sum, so whatever system, it's a lump sum. So it's not less effort, more effort, so it'll be less cost or more cost on the engineering side. We're just all in for whatever system you tell us to design. So it's not a variable that goes according to the system.
What was the question?
What's that?
What was the question?
I think there was a question posed.
Yeah.
And are we still taking the roof off?
New roof on, yes.
Are we taking the old roof off?
We're not sure of that. It might go on top of that existing roof.
You gotta come to the beginning of the meeting, buddy.
I'm sorry, I was doing inspections.
We might use that as the deck and build onto it.
We put foam on that
Yeah.
and go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, I mean, my opinion is the best system for this application is the VRF.
Is that a motion?
Do I have a motion?
I'll move to recommend the VRF system for this.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Would you like me to go get a cost estimate to update you on the budget?
Yes.
Is that a
Do we
motion?
need a yeah, probably. Based on the May 24th plan?
It's part of our scope of services, so it's all within our contract. So moved.
Yep. Second?
Second.
One quick point before we say
Yep.
the word. Is there any more, is there still room to move just
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The cost estimate is not gonna change if we continue to move a couple walls or move a couple doors, and, no.
A question about the walls. What are you considering for building the walls? Is it block masonry at all, or is it all?
The only masonry,
Steel studs.
if you look at the plan, we have some hatch in the prisoner processing area. And the thicker hatched walls in prisoner processing are all masonry. The rest of the walls would be metal stud.
So basically, that whole prisoner processing area looks like it's block walls?
Is all fully grouted masonry.
You can get through that with a spoon, though, if you're...
It'll take you a while. More than one meal.
Yeah, so if you walk in prisoner processing, you're gonna see all masonry walls. If you walk in the rest of the facility, it's drywall, painted.
Okay.
Is there a need,
Except the armory.
is there a need for new masonry on the front elevation? Does that support the panel? It does?
So, no, it doesn't support anything, but it's single wide.
I mean, can you just do panels down?
So we had, sorry, I was going to second, but we already seconded.
We already second.
Got a motion on the table.
I assume the armory is reinforced as well.
No, it's drywall. The armory. It's because it's just storage of boxed ammunition, storage of firearms, and storage of,
That's that high-impact drywall, right?
we do have a masonry wall that separates the high bay garage from the rest of the building. So that separation wall between the vehicle area and the building, that's a rated masonry wall. So that'll go full height masonry. The rest of it, within the facility, you'll see drywall.
Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Unanimous. Good. Jack, we have some bills to pay?
We do.
Okay.
I think I have like 7 sets, just for fun. And then one with a paper clip is the original, so I'll start signing them just for...
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think there's one from Brian, correct? And then there's
Correct.
multiple from my office that go back to,
Each of these signed?
November.
Well, how about if I'll just pass this original around and we'll sign this one.
Yeah.
Those were just for you to look
Brian
at.
hasn't got anything, so I've been getting screamed at a little bit, but it's all right.
How long do you need before we get back? 2, 3 weeks?
At least 2 weeks. I would say 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks. Because Memorial Day's in there, so.
Brian's. Jack, do you have Brian's in here? Or do you have that?
Signing you.
Only we get paid.
Oh, come on.
Sorry, Brian.
Sorry.
Maybe
I
next
gave him
time.
mine last week.
Jack, is Brian's in this, or is it separate? Oh, it's on top, okay, good.
Well, it's on top here, but I think it's on the bottom. Oh, no. Oh, there's probably a set of Brian's. I bet Jim has it. Jim usually keeps those things.
No, it's
Mike's...
it's just
See?
upside down.
Blame me.
See, I'm just one page.
It's simple.
How many invoices you got?
Go back to November or...
Wow.
Right, that's your...
Yeah.
We've been living off a little bit of cash flow off of...
It's actually more than that.
Brian. We're still doing good though. I mean, this is what we have. I've built that to date, you know, so I've been... You know...
So is that gonna get you through?
Yeah, that's, I think, more than plenty, and I hope to have some left to transfer to construct, you know. I'm trying to keep it.
Sorry, so we're not getting it.
Any help, huh?
What's that?
You're not getting any help, it's all you.
That's all
Right,
Andrew,
yeah,
Andrew,
no, I
Andrew,
don't,
Andrew.
right, well, that's,
No support.
no, so, but there is a good, just showing Brian, I mean, I'm trying to keep the hours as low as I can, you know.
I don't like it because it
I'd
gets
like
too
you to
hot.
say yes.
They don't like the tubes either because the tubes get too hot.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
George, do you want to set a date?
Yes.
Great recovery rate, they're
Yeah.
quieter.
Really?
Tuesday's better than Mondays? It doesn't matter to me.
We're in agreement.
Yeah, we actually.
14th?
Wouldn't
I
you
can
know?
ask them again, but
That's 3
they
weeks.
said there's been some
Okay
fire.
by me.
Well, and now that, as far as I know, they're ready with
Flag Day.
PVC, so they can go out the sidewalk.
good day to do it.
As opposed to the Modis.
That's,
4 o'clock?
I'm
was that
not
a Monday?
big fan of putting
That's a
more
Tuesday.
holes.
Tuesday, that's fine.
There was some fire concern with those.
What was it then?
Being,
14th.
causing some fires.
Oh, the chief's right here, let's ask him.
What's up?
Yeah, it's tube radiant
o'clock?
heat instead of doing
Yeah.
modine units.
The tubes cold, they run the whole length of the building, or the garage. and
17th?
The flame goes down.
14th.
Yeah, radiant.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything bad about it.
They're quiet, they're really efficient,
Very high.
really fast recovery.
Very high efficiency too. I
You
don't
just
think,
think blasting you in the face whenever you think how it's aimed.
This is the garages we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I can't think of.
Turffield's back in the mix, I heard.
My part of
Bob, did you have any, did we find any survey info, or is very little? It's probably best to have another survey.
Honestly, I forgot to look.
Okay. I'll work with,
I'll call you tomorrow.
yeah,
Slacking on my survey, huh?
right. But do we do a motion not to exceed 10,000 or something if we could go out to get it? I think it'd be worth, I think we see what's on file, but getting a survey. What do you think, Dor?
Let's see what's on file.
Yeah,
It's
let
on
me s-
file? Yeah,
let's see.
all right, that's fine.
I'll go over there right now and see if I can find it.
Is the 14th okay with you, Brian? For next meeting?
Flag Day, it's perfect. Tuesday,
Yes.
Tuesday the 14th?
Yep. That's a good day? Is that good for everybody?
Yep.
All right. Next meeting will be the 14th then, 4 o'clock.
If, I signed you up, Andrew, for getting automatic notifications when we post a meeting, so if
Oh, okay, great,
go.
thank
anybody
you.
else wants to sign up for automatic postings. Mike usually keeps me on.
And when it gets posted, they email you automatically?
Yeah. If he posts.
Andrew, you wanna stop over?
Yeah, I'll swing by. Thanks, Bob.
Those
More people that know, the better.
those rare times that he posts it. You get the,
That's why I had Sue coming to the meeting. She was in charge of posting.
see what happens this time.
Didn't last long.
No, I think it's best, even if there is one, to get a survey.
It's not gonna be accurate.
Right, it's,
Way too much stress.
you agree, Mike, to get a survey?
When is it, if I can?
Right, that way there's no,
He's not gonna find an accurate survey.
I'm gonna be away Monday and Tuesday after Memorial Day, but other than that, I should be around.
6th and 7th.
Yeah,
Dennis
I'll be away
has,
the
isn't
6th and
it,
7th.
they did the heat
If you're in the road, those guy.
because of the generator.
Okay.
So of course, I'm sure she's probably paying.
The baseboard.
They brought
Yeah,
baseboard
I-
because
Because
they
of the
had a
generator.
Yeah,
boiler
man, maybe if
already.
we could do it, you know,
Wanted to supplement.
Yeah,
In the cold days.
that Monday of,
right.
The VRF might not
you know,
be
before
enough
this
in the
meeting.
coldest
The
of
meeting's on
cold.
Tuesday, so.
So they get the booster
Right.
of the radiant.
Let's see if we can do it.
Maybe.
Gary Barber says they're never gonna use the
Monday
radiant.
or
Right.
Tuesday.
They're never gonna need it.
about heating.
Maybe if it's 20 below, they'll might use it, but
All I know is I want to be able to go like
They went
this.
through the
when my
winter, they
secretary
never-
wants to go like this.
I'm telling you, the VAV systems, it's just, you're right, it's making bigger areas.
Yeah, right,
It's all white out.
VAV systems, though, the triad still issued. Oh, you might.
For this,
We didn't officially adjourn the meeting, but I guess we did.
motion to adjourn.
We have that system.
Chuck
I
second.
think we have that basically where we are now.
I,
Yeah.
go about getting